the Spirit in Mind broadcast with your hosts, Bishop C. Guy Robinson and Dr. Jonathan Shepard, where we explore faith and mental health perspectives on current affairs. Let's get into today's discussion with the Spirit in Mind.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to Spirit in Mind, where we discuss current affairs with faith and mental health perspectives. I'm Bishop Guy Robinson, and it is a delight to be able to share this time with you. Certainly trust that you are experiencing happy holidays or happy holy days during this season. And of course, it is always a blessing to have Dr. Shepard with us,
colleague, co-laborer in this labor of love that is Spirit in Mind.
Great day, Dr. Shepard.
Hey, Bishop, how are you, sir?
Doing well, doing well. How's your week?
Week has been good. I have been enjoying myself, and as I've been studying for these board recertification exams. And,
My Lord.
Yeah, something I have to do every 10 years, and I want people to know that I will finish on time. But just as you're out there Christmas shopping, I'm sure all of you all are against some deadlines too, and we'll have everything in place. And I just want to greet everybody, let everybody know, come on in. You can watch us on our different social media outlets and go log in. Come on, folks out there on Praise 106.1. Glad to be with you all on this afternoon.
Absolutely, man. Why don't we throw in there that we're praying for all of our school students? I know that this is exam week coming up for some, amen. And, I'm grading papers and you writing papers, and so the semester's coming to an end. And I think we're both looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
You write them, I read them and grade them, and then we get your grades in, and then we can move forward. So
Yes.
You're either taking an exam, about to take an exam, or grading an exam, however. Whatever you need help with, may this encouragement help you to push through this season that we're pushing through to the glory of God. So again, I want to echo what Dr. Shepard said in terms of letting somebody know we're on. To all of you that are listening on Praise 106 or listening on the podcast, however you're listening or watching us as we are live streaming, we're grateful to have multiple ways to stay in touch with you and help you to keep the Spirit in mind. Listen, we've been talking about, we actually were talking about quiet quitting is how we began, which is a phenomenon that's really taken a lot of attention in our society today on the backdrop of the abatement, at least, if not the end of the pandemic. And so as we were gathering again and returning to workplaces and workforces, this conversation about quiet quitting began to occupy our time. And that took us into this holiday or holy day season. And as Dr. Shepard said a couple of weeks ago, for everyone, this is not the most wonderful time of the year because of circumstances and situations. And we added to that the spiritual reality that even though this is a holy season, it also represents a time of spiritual warfare. In the scriptures, from a spiritual perspective, there was something that was birthed that the enemy did not want to get to the people of God to be a blessing. It's a time, and those of you that know the Christmas story know that this is when death decrees were put out for young children trying to catch the Messiah. So it's a time of joy, but it's also a time when there are spiritual forces that don't want people to come into the promises of God. And so it is a time of warfare, lest we forget that. And we've got the victory. That's the point. And we want to reiterate that. So we're not forecasting doom and gloom. We're forecasting victory. And but in the midst of that, we have to have some coping strategies as we deal with some things. So Dr. Shepard, it's going to take us a little further into today's conversation, and we look forward to your input and insight as well. Dr. Shepard?
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you, Bishop. And just in his introductory remarks, I was just reminded of just the burden of grief, because as we're fighting, even in this happy time of the year, there are so many people, and especially for those of you all who are in Baltimore with us right now, you know, we've already surpassed the 300 mark for homicides. And one of the biggest reasons we're having those is because of unresolved conflict. And if you're not careful, even in this time and season where we should be celebrating Christ's birth, we're celebrating, unfortunately, deaths, homecomings, unexpected homecomings, and we're carrying that burden of grief. And Bishop, as I was preparing this week, the illustration came to mind. I really think this illustration is going to help to set the foundation for today's conversation. I was reminded back in the spring of a cargo ship, the Ever Forward cargo ship, that got stuck in the Chesapeake Bay. And so those here in Baltimore, you heard about it because it was out there for over 5 weeks, even made national news. And with this particular cargo ship, had tons of cargo, various different items. God forbid that that happened right now as we're waiting on our supplies to be shipped for Christmas. But this particular cargo ship was stuck in the Chesapeake Bay, and the cargo that was on it had weighed it down so much that it ended up not being able to move once it ran aground one of those sandbars. The person who was piloting the ship, we're not sure, was he unexperienced about the terrain, but anyway, ended up getting onto a sandbar and could not get the ship back afloat. And one of the things that was amazing to me was how many times they attempted to get that cargo ship back afloat. They tried at least 3 separate times before they could get that ship refloated again. And one of the major reasons was because how much it was weighted down. All the cargo that was on that ship literally had to be removed by various different tugboats. And tugboats were required to get that cargo off so the ship could refloat again. I know you all out there know where I'm going, and I'm sure Bishop knows where I'm going. Again, with the quiet quitting, with the grief, some of us need to unload the grief this season. In the next 3 or so weeks that we have before going into a new year, it's time to unload that cargo of grief that's been weighing you down. Some of us literally are stuck. And when I look at quiet quitting, a lot of it has to do when we get stuck due to how much that is weighing us down. Could be weighing us down due to grief, loss, trauma for longer than expected times. And so, Bishop, I'm just going to leave it right there. I'm going to come back to this, but I'm sure by now you have some comments to add on to this, because that Bishop was just so profound, that illustration, as I think about it. And even think about the name of Ever Forward and how it got stuck when it's supposed to be moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really filled with spiritual imagery. And that's really just in a very general way what it means to be in tune to the things of the Spirit. A good definition of spirit means invisible but influential presence and realities. So you can't see it per se, but you can perceive it. And it's influencing. It's a whether it be a psychodynamic force, whether it be something intangible. And so think about that. It's called Ever Forward. That's what somebody named it. It speaks of its purpose. The reason why it is existing is to move things forward. Ever forward. That's its purpose and destiny, just like you and I have a divine purpose and destiny. Just like God told the prophet, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you and ordained you. So there's purpose to our life that precedes our existence. Right. And so it's that idea. So ever forward. And then, but because of the burdens that it was carrying, the burden that it was carrying was too great for the pathway that it was taking, because it was weighing it down. And maybe if it had been in a different setting, but in that setting, the bay in that area was too shallow, and the course did not accommodate all the weight. Wow. And so it got stuck. Ever forward, moving nowhere. And you and I know that one of the definitions and characteristics of mental health by the World Health Organization is the ability to realize our potential or realize our abilities. So my potential and purpose is to move ever forward, but I'm stuck. Wow. So it's a spiritual crisis. it's a mental health crisis. It can represent or symbolize. So because I have a sense that I'm supposed to be doing more than this, but I'm stuck.
Wow.
And so, and the only way to get unstuck is to undo some of this weight that I've been carrying, because this weight is not helping me to move forward. And Hebrews 12 puts it this way. It talks about, let us lay aside every weight that does so easily beset us. If you have another translation that says that so easily ensnares us. To be ensnared means to be trapped. It's to be stuck. And so there's weight that has me stuck. So let us lay aside every weight that gets us stuck so that we can run this race. So you got somewhere to go. That's the point that I think it means spiritually to somebody needs to know. You've got life ahead of you. You've got somewhere you need to be. And if you stay with your analogy, I'm finished this because this turned into a message. I might have to preach this. So listen. And it's a cargo ship.
Yes.
Which means there's stuff in you that other people are waiting to be delivered.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. You're causing a whole supply shortage because you're meant to be a blessing to some others, because your purpose and destiny is never just personal. It's always corporate. Because again, we know continuing the definition of mental health includes being able to make contributions to something, our community larger than us. So there's a community that's waiting on you to become all that you are purposed and destined to become. So you got to unload it for you, of course, but you also got to unload it for your family and for those in your community and for those who need you to become what you're called to become, because it inspires them as well. So there's a whole lot riding on this. So you got to get this weight off of you.
Wow. Please come on, chime in with us while we're online, live streaming here. We want to hear from you. Bishop, I'm staying there because as you were saying that, it reminded me that even on various course of actions, so I'm sure this cargo ship had floated and had delivered cargo before. This was not the vessel's initial run.
Mm-hmm.
And because the pilot of that ship didn't understand the terrain, now that's what ended up causing that shipwreck, or I wouldn't say shipwreck, but that ship running across that sandbar and getting stuck. And what it was telling me is that, wow, we really have to know how we're being led and where to be able to go as we're carrying that cargo that's so precious, as you just described, because that cargo was going somewhere to help someone else. But, as we're preparing for 2023, you need to check yourself on what course of action you're on. Because some of the courses of actions that we're on is not the right one. And that's why we have run across the sandbar. We don't understand the terrain. Now, again, it's very interesting here. The second point I was going to bring out, Bishop, they just prosecuted that pilot of the ship just a few weeks ago, less than a month ago. That's interesting that it took, that was back in April, May, I think actually March and April. And now here we are in December, almost 6, 7, 8 months. It took that amount of time to be able to figure out what to do with that person. What that told me is that there's going to be some lingering consequences at times when you have gone awry. And sometimes you go awry, and depending on what lane you're driving in, you're like, man, I got away with this one. It's 7, 8 months down the road, and you say, okay, well, everything is okay now. And then here they come after you to prosecute you. Or it could be you didn't realize how much this thing really affected you. There's another lane I'm driving down, and now 6, 7, 8 months down the road later, you're like, wow, that thing now is really sticking with me. And I know many of you all feel like that because that's what happens with grief. Many of us were not experiencing the same symptoms of grief from that initial reaction, from that initial loss. And so, Bishop, that was just so profound as we think about the people, even including myself. What happens when we find ourselves stuck on a sandbar? In this case, the person is going to be prosecuted. But some of us got stuck not because of our fault, but because we didn't understand the terrain that we were navigating in. And again, that's a whole other message, even in itself. But what I also want to conclude my portion of comments is that the third point here, that you need someone else to help you to unload when you find yourself stuck. And that's one of the major reasons of why I'm going to stay here for 1 minute. You need to make sure that you have a spiritual leader. You talk about the Trinity. I've heard you talk about that, Bishop. You need to have Jesus, who is the burden bearer. But then you need to have a spiritual leader. You can't forget that. You need to have a pastor. And that person can help to remove that cargo that needs to be removed. And then you need to have an assigned mental health professional to help remove that cargo to refloat you again. All right. We talk a lot about replenishing and revival and reinvigorating. Some of us just need to be refloated again. And in order to be able to do that, we have to be able to inspect you. Because when that ship was refloated again, you have to be inspected to make sure there are no holes or damage. So that's why it's so important to be surrounded by good people. And that's one of the reasons for this show, to remind you not just to get back up and get going again, but you got to be inspected. Make sure that that trauma is not leaving any lingering effects so that you're able to move forward and keep moving ever forward.
Absolutely. And assess the lessons from the experience. As we were talking, I just looked up in Washington Post, among others, reporting. And again, this isn't to vilify anyone, but my assignment is just strictly focused on lifting the spiritual principles out of this incident. And that's one of the roles of a pastoral figure, is that as we go through life, look at the scriptures, how God is using inspired men and women to interpret. I'll restore to you what the locust has devoured, and crop issues and socio-political things, and putting them in spiritual context, because we don't always understand what God is saying through our everyday lives. But God is a talking God, as I heard Bishop Jackie McCullough saying before. He talks, he still speaks, and even we sing that, still he speaks from eternity. And so he is a talking God. He talks through his word. He talks through things we go through. And so I say that to say, one of the things that's critical as we continue this discussion is that the reports that were conducted found that the ship's pilot was on the phone at a critical turning point in the bay. Oh my goodness. He was distracted at a critical point of turning. Oh my goodness. And that's the spirituality, because you have to understand that one of the assignments of the adversary of our faith is to create distractions at critical junctures in our lives. And that is really so that if he had been paying attention a little more, or had been a little more focused, there would be no need for the refloating. He only has to be refloated because he lost focus at a critical, I'm using the word here, at a critical turning point in the Chesapeake Bay. And some of you today are at critical turning points in your life. You're at critical points of navigating. You can't be distracted by things that drama and unresolved conflict. You got to get some conflict resolution skills so that you can talk through them, because you can't be distracted by the drama and what it's doing and getting you riled up, and your sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. Because you got some critical turns and some critical decisions, and you got precious cargo, because you are the temple of the Holy Ghost, and people are waiting on you. The Bible says that the whole creation travails, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. There are other people, and you're doing it for you. But a part of understanding who you are is that you're also a social individual. And there's a society, there's a family, there's a community that is depending on you making the right turn at this juncture in your life.
Wow. And so we want to help to remove those distractions.
Yes.
We've got to quiet those distractions. That is so profound, Bishop. Thank you for pointing that out, because when we are in critical times, and 2022, December 10th, we are in a critical time in our lives. So many of us are facing turns, and I have a feeling we're going to be dealing with that as we go into our next series about how to make sure that we are removing the distractions. I heard my pastor talk recently about how to remove yourself from the crowd. Are you going to be a part of the crowd, or are you going to be a climber, as she has described? And one of the biggest things is that when you're attempting to hear from the Lord, and when you're attempting to make big decisions, you cannot be distracted. This is not a time in my life where I'm going to be making a lot of major decisions right now, because I have a lot going on. I'm trying to finish exams. It's holiday season. Other stuff is going on. The volume of patients. And you have to be able to assess yourself critically and honestly. Bishop, that's what gets me sometimes. We know we're not focused,
Mm-hmm.
but yet we go ahead and take the job. You know you weren't ready for that job. Oh, it's just got a lot of money, Dr. Shepherd. I get it. Wait a minute. But you know that you didn't have the capacity. Your mind wasn't there. You knew that you had to figure out the childcare situation before taking the job. And now once you got the job, that's why you quiet quitting, because you didn't properly assess where you were when you first took the job. We have to be so careful that we assess where we're at. And I'll just say this even about the enemy. The enemy, yes, he is out there, but he's not as powerful as some of you all make him to be. You are powerful. He takes advantage of when we are distracted. That's why it's so important to be able to keep your mind stayed on him. That's why it's important to keep your mind focused. And so you reduce that noise. But I challenge you even today. Some of you have some major decisions that are going on right now in your life. And you need to properly assess, am I in a good space? Am I in a good headspace to make this decision? And if you're not, that's okay. All right? Give yourself some grace, because if you're not, you're going to be distracted and you're going to end up running against the sandbar. And hopefully we don't see you out there in the Chesapeake Bay, so to speak, because folks started coming out there. Remember that?
Yeah. Looking.
They started looking. People coming from miles away.
Yeah.
Just to look.
Yeah.
And that's a bad place to be at. The shame, the guilt, some of us, people just looking at us.
That'll work right there, because you can't confuse the spectators with the actual people who can help you.
Wow.
Because some people can only look, but they can't help you get unstuck. So the people who were sent to get them unstuck were far fewer than the people who were standing by.
Wow.
And so oh my goodness. You'll have a lot of opinions and a lot of spectators, but you got to listen to and focus on the people who have an anointing to get you unstuck, who have the skill set.
Wow. That's why you got to separate yourself from the crowd.
Yeah.
When you want to hear from God, when you want to hear and make decisions appropriately, you've got to separate yourself from the crowd, from the noise, so that you can get in a quiet place to hear the instruction, to hear what's being said to your mind, to speak to your mind. I've been saying that even in my sessions with people. I look at them sometimes and I'm like, I'm not speaking to your physical person. I'm speaking directly to your mind, because I need your mind to catch a hold of what is being said. And when you can speak to a person's mind, let me tell you, your emotions, your physical, social, spiritual, as we talked about with SIP and C, your spiritual, intellectual, physical, social, emotional, and even economical life will fall in order when you're able to remove those distractions. So I hope that you all are getting this illustration today, this analogy today. I know we're getting close to time. I think we have about 3 more minutes. And so, Bishop, this has just been real good today.
Yes, we can. And our scriptural reference, again, you can read that. It's Hebrews 12. Again, it talks about laying aside every weight. And we got that to parallel with the illustration about the ever forward vessel, vessel that's carrying precious cargo, just like you are. There's purpose, destiny, potential, abilities, talents, gifts packaged in you. And you got somewhere to be. You got something to live for. You got things to accomplish and someone to become. You're a human being and a human becoming, because it does not yet appear what we shall be, but you shall be like the one who gave you purpose and destiny. And so you got to accommodate the weight for where you are. And that's powerful because it meant that not everything that I carried in previous seasons can carry into this season.
Wow.
Because it just doesn't fit. The way is too narrow. Broad is the way that leads to destruction, but narrow is. And so there are seasons when you have to give your regards to Broadway, if you will. say I can't take the Broadway. I'm on the straight and narrow path. So give my regards to Broadway. I'm going to stay on the straight and narrow, and I have to lay aside some weight for some stuff that can't carry on this narrow path. It was with me on Broadway, and I'm not hating it. Thank God for my Broadway associations, but I'm on a narrow path right now. It's me, God, and my purpose and destiny, and those who are anointed to be in this season. So I got to unpack some stuff for where I am right now. It's not personal, it's purposeful. And so there's no angst in it. There's no irritation. It's just God has me in a place where only I can go to this part with him and a few others. But what you don't want to do is carry people, because none of you will get there. You'll get stuck and you'll all be there. So we lay aside every weight. And that comes in different forms, whether it's drama and or sometimes it's healthy, because not everything is bad. Not every relationship ends on a blow up. Sometimes it ends on a grow up. And so, these are just things we have to pray about. And we won't exhaust this today. I feel this turning into part 2.
Yes.
That's a powerful illustration, Dr. Shepherd, with this ever forward. That's your name, your identity. And we could talk about that next week, because first of all, you got to identify or be in the way of your identity. My name is ever forward. and when you know who you are, you know what you should do. So listen, Dr. Shepherd, I know we're running out of time. So
Yes. We're wrapping up here. And so thank you all so much. We're going to give our regards to Broadway, and we're going to get on the narrow way. We're going to get out of your way. That's what we also going to do. We will be back. Please let somebody know that Spirit in Mind is on the air each Saturday live. Yes, we are live in the studio. We are live on Facebook, social media platforms. Please send your regards, your feedback. I'm loving the various messages that we're getting at. You can look us up. Pastor or Bishop is the pastor of the Tabernacle. There's his information there for those watching. Please reach out to him. And so reach out to me also on my various social media platforms. If you need some direct care services, I'll be glad to assist you in that endeavor, because we want to make sure that we're ignoring the distractions and getting back refloated and back to where we need to be at.
Thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Spirit in Mind.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at Spirit in Mind, and we're also on Instagram at Spirit in Mind Live. Join us next time for a new episode of Spirit in Mind.